My name is Carolyn Mendez. I'm 65 years old, and I live in Boise, Idaho. For most of my life, I worked as a librarian at a small public library downtown. The kind of quiet job where stories live in the air and people come seeking a little piece of peace. I loved that about it. The silence, the smell of old books, and the gentle rhythm of life that libraries carry. I retired 3 years ago, thinking it would finally be time to rest, to spend more moments with my children, and maybe even travel a bit. But after my husband David passed away, nothing really felt the same. It's been almost 11 years since that day. He was the love of my life, charming, funny, a little careless sometimes, but the kind of man who could make any room feel lighter. When he died in a hiking accident up in the Sawtooth Mountains, my world shattered like glass. I remember sitting in the kitchen that night, the police officer's voice echoing in my ears as he told me they'd found his belongings near a cliff. But no body. Everyone told me to accept it, to grieve, to move on. So, I did. Slowly, painfully, and with more tears than I can count. I poured myself into raising our 2 children, Ethan and Lila. Ethan was just 26 back then, strong-willed and determined to take care of me. Lila was 23, tender-hearted and fragile, always trying to stay strong for my sake. Together, we built a new rhythm of life, birthdays, holidays, graduations, everything without the one man who had held us together. And now, 11 years later, here I was, standing in my living room, surrounded by wedding invitations and gift boxes, preparing for Ethan's wedding. My baby boy, now a man of 37, was getting married to a wonderful girl named Sophie. It felt surreal. I'd watched him grow from a shy little boy into someone dependable, loving, and wise. Lila had been helping with all the arrangements, making sure everything went perfectly. I was proud, but there was an ache in my chest that wouldn't leave. That missing seat at the table, that absent laugh. As I looked at Ethan's wedding suit hanging by the door, I whispered softly to myself, "David, you would have been so proud of him." The house was quiet, the kind of quiet that carries old memories. I could almost hear David's voice teasing me, telling me not to cry. But my eyes still filled with tears. Sometimes grief doesn't disappear. It just changes its shape. I took a deep breath and smiled faintly, trying to hold on to the joy of the moment. My son was starting his own life. Maybe it was time I truly learned to live again too. I didn't know then that the story I had buried years ago, the story of my husband's disappearance, was about to rise from the ashes, and when it did, it would shatter everything I thought I knew about love, truth, and loss. The week of the wedding felt like a storm wrapped in sunshine. Busy, chaotic, but beautiful. My house was filled with laughter, decorations, and the scent of vanilla candles. Ethan and Sophie had chosen a small outdoor ceremony by the lake, surrounded by family and friends. Lila arrived 2 days before the big day, her energy lighting up every corner of the home. She had grown into a strong woman, balancing her job as a social worker with her natural gift for caring about everyone else's happiness more than her own. She came into my room one morning, holding a cup of coffee, and said, "Mum, you need to relax." "You've been worrying about every little detail." I smiled and took the cup from her. "Old habits," I said softly. "I just want everything to be perfect for him." Ethan came in a few minutes later, tie half done, looking just like his father used to. "Mum, does this color look okay?" he asked. I looked up at him, tall, kind-eyed and responsible, and my throat tightened. "It's perfect," I whispered. For a moment, I saw David standing there, smiling at me from across time. The rehearsal dinner went smoothly. Sophie's family was warm and welcoming, and everyone seemed genuinely happy. The restaurant was decorated with twinkling, lights, soft music, and laughter that filled the air like champagne bubbles. I sat back, watching Ethan pull Sophie close as they danced, and my heart swelled. For the first time in years, I felt at peace. Watching my children smile made me forget the years of loneliness. I'd spent so many nights imagining what David would say if he were here. How proud he'd be to see his son step into this new chapter. But there was also something strange that week. A restlessness I couldn't name. Every time I looked at the lake, a cold feeling crept into my chest, like a whisper from the past. I shook it off, blaming it on nostalgia. That evening, when everyone had gone to bed, I sat alone by the window. The moonlight fell softly on the framed photo of our family from years ago, me, David, Ethan, and Lila smiling by the porch. I ran my fingers across David's face and sighed. "If only you were here," I murmured. Somewhere deep down, I wished for a sign, anything to feel like he could still see us. I didn't realize that wish was about to be answered. Not in a way that would bring comfort, but in a way that would rip open the wounds I thought had healed long ago. David had been everything to me once, the heartbeat of my world. We met when I was 22, working part-time at a library, and he was a young biology teacher with an adventurous spirit. He loved hiking, camping, exploring the wild, while I was the quiet one, the planner, the worrier. Somehow we balanced each other. We built a home filled with warmth and laughter. Ethan inherited his calm nature, while Lila took after me. Sensitive, observant, always overthinking. Life wasn't perfect, but it was ours. David often said, "If life gives us a storm, we'll dance in the rain." I believed him. Until the day the storm took him away. That day changed everything. He'd gone hiking with a friend in the Sawtooth Mountains, but only his bag and watch were found near a steep ravine. No body, no clear answers, just empty explanations. The sheriff called it an accident, but something inside me always wondered if that was the whole truth. I remember the night after the news, sitting on the kitchen floor, hugging David's jacket, breathing in the scent that was fading with every passing second. Ethan had stayed strong, comforting me, while Lila couldn't stop crying. Lights, soft music, and laughter that filled the air like champagne bubbles. I sat back, watching Ethan pull Sophie close as they danced, and my heart swelled. For the first time in years, I felt at peace. Watching my children smile made me forget the years of loneliness. I'd spent so many nights imagining what David would say if he were here. How proud he'd be to see his son step into this new chapter. But there was also something strange that week, a restlessness I couldn't name. Every time I looked at the lake, a cold feeling crept into my chest, like a whisper from the past. I shook it off, blaming it on nostalgia. That evening, when everyone had gone to bed, I sat alone by the window. The moonlight fell softly on the framed photo of our family from years ago, me, David, Ethan, and Lila smiling by the porch. I ran my fingers across David's face and sighed. "If only you were here," I murmured. Somewhere deep down, I wished for a sign, anything to feel like he could still see us. I didn't realize that wish was about to be answered, not in a way that would bring comfort, but in a way that would rip open the wounds I thought had healed long ago. David had been everything to me once, the heartbeat of my world. We met when I was 22, working part-time at a library, and he was a young biology teacher with an adventurous spirit. He loved hiking, camping, exploring the wild, while I was the quiet one, the planner, the worrier. Somehow we balanced each other. We built a home filled with warmth and laughter. Ethan inherited his calm nature, while Lila took after me, sensitive, observant, always overthinking. Life wasn't perfect, but it was ours. David often said, "If life gives us a storm, we'll dance in the rain." I believed him, until the day the storm took him away. That day changed everything. He'd gone hiking with a friend in the Sawtooth Mountains, but only his bag and watch were found near a steep ravine. No body, no clear answers, just empty explanations. The sheriff called it an accident, but something inside me always wondered if that was the whole truth. I remember the night after the news, sitting on the kitchen floor, hugging David's jacket, breathing in the scent that was fading with every passing second. Ethan had stayed strong, comforting me, while Lila couldn't stop crying. We buried an empty coffin that week. Years passed, and the ache dulled, but never disappeared. Sometimes I'd wake up at night, hearing footsteps, imagining the front door opening. But it never did. I learned to live with silence. I learned to smile through it. Now, as Ethan's wedding approached, I found myself thinking of David more than ever. I imagined him walking beside me, whispering his old jokes, his arm around my shoulder. Maybe grief never truly leaves. It just hides behind happy moments, waiting to remind you it still exists. If I had known what was coming, I would have prayed for the silence to stay. Because sometimes the truth hurts more than the lie ever did. The wedding day arrived, bathed in sunlight and soft breeze. The ceremony by the lake was picture perfect. Ethan looked dashing, Sophie radiant, and Lila glowing with pride. I stood under a canopy of white roses, holding back tears as they exchanged vows. Later that evening, we gathered at the Riverside Hall, a cozy restaurant near the water. The tables shimmered under golden lights, and music floated softly in the background. I sat between my children, watching their laughter, soaking in every sound, every smile. It was the kind of night that felt like a reward after years of endurance. Guests chatted, glasses clinked, and the air buzzed with celebration. I looked around and thought, this is it. The peace I'd been waiting for. For a moment, I could almost feel David's hand on my shoulder. "You did it, honey," he'd say in my imagination. Lila leaned over and said, "Mum, you're crying again." I laughed and wiped my tears. "Happy tears," I replied. She smiled, then whispered, "Dad would have loved this night." I nodded, unable to speak. When the waiter announced the family toast, Ethan stood up, glass raised. His voice trembled slightly as he said, "To my mother, who taught me what love really means." My heart swelled. Everyone clapped. The sound echoed through me like a heartbeat. As the applause faded, the restaurant door opened. A man walked in, tall, older, but strangely familiar. Conversations paused, heads turned. He stood there for a second, scanning the crowd, then smiled faintly when his eyes met mine. My stomach tightened. I couldn't move. The laughter dimmed, the lights seemed too bright. Somewhere deep inside I knew this night wasn't going to end the way I thought it would. The man stepped closer, his polished shoes tapping softly against the wooden floor. As he approached, I recognized him. Mark Turner, my husband David's closest friend. My breath caught. I hadn't seen him since David's funeral. "Mark," I said, standing up slowly. He nodded, his eyes unreadable. "It's been a long time, Carolyn." People whispered quietly as he approached our table. Ethan looked confused. Sophie glanced at me, and Lila frowned, trying to recall the name. "You know him, Mum?" she asked softly. "Yes," I murmured. "He was your father's best friend." Mark smiled faintly but didn't sit down. His presence carried a strange tension, like a secret waiting to be told. "I'm sorry to interrupt," he said politely, voice trembling. "I came because there's something I need to share tonight." Something important. I tried to smile to ease the awkwardness. "Maybe after dinner, Mark?" I said gently, my heart already racing. But he shook his head. "No, it can't wait." He looked at me, and for a moment his eyes softened, like he pitied me. Carolyn, he said slowly, David wanted you to know something. My heart skipped. David? I whispered, gripping the edge of the table. Mark exhaled deeply. He asked me to tell you, this is the end for us. He's found someone new. The room fell silent. I felt the walls closing in, the sound of my heartbeat louder than the music. Ethan froze, glass in hand. Lila's eyes widened in disbelief. It was as if time itself had stopped. And in that silence, my past had just come back to destroy everything I thought I'd healed from. For a few seconds, no one moved. The entire restaurant seemed to hold its breath. The sound of clinking glasses, laughter, music, everything faded into a thick, suffocating silence. My knees went weak, and I had to grip the table to steady myself. What are you talking about? I managed to whisper. Mark looked at me, then down at the floor, his jaw tightening. David is alive, Carolyn, he said. Chest felt hollow. My throat burned. My husband, the man I mourned, the man I buried in my heart, had been alive. And not only alive, he had chosen to stay away. That night, the wedding dinner ended early. Guests left quietly, unsure what to say. My son's happiest night had turned into a nightmare. As I stood outside the hall, the cold air biting my skin, one thought kept echoing in my mind. What kind of man fakes his death to start over? The next morning, the house felt like a graveyard. The wedding decorations still hung on the walls, bright and cheerful, a cruel contrast to the heaviness in the air. Ethan hadn't slept. He sat at the kitchen table, the letter lying between us like a wound that wouldn't close. Do you believe it? He asked finally, his voice rough. I didn't know how to answer. I don't want to, I said quietly, but that handwriting, it's his. I know it. Lila walked in, eyes swollen. I couldn't sleep, she said softly. I kept dreaming that Dad was knocking on the door. She looked at me with a broken kind of hope. What if Mark is lying? I wanted to believe that. I wanted to believe it so badly it hurt. But the letter, the details, the tone, it was all David, the man I had loved more than life itself. Ethan slammed his hand on the table. If he's alive, I'll find him, he said fiercely. He doesn't get to walk away after ruining everything. Ethan, please, I began, but he cut me off. No, Mom. He faked his death. He watched us suffer. You spent years alone thinking he was gone. We deserve answers. I wanted to stop him, but a part of me agreed. I needed answers too. I needed to know why. By noon, Ethan had packed a bag. Lila begged him to wait, but he was determined. If he's really in Oregon, I'll bring him back, he said. When he left, I felt a deep emptiness. My son was chasing a ghost. And I didn't know whether he'd find closure or more heartbreak. That night, I sat in my room, staring at old photos. There was one from our last family vacation. David smiling with his arm around me, the kids splashing in the background. I touched the photo gently, whispering, Why, David? Why did you do this to us? The house creaked in the quiet. For the first time since that wedding night, I felt something else besides grief. Fear. Because if David had really chosen to disappear, it meant there was a side of him I'd never known. And the thought of discovering who he truly was terrified me. Ethan called me 3 days later. His voice was tense. Mum, I found something, he said. A record of someone named David M. Turner, renting a cabin in southern Oregon for the past few years. The age matches. It's him. I felt my heart race. What are you going to do? I'm driving there tomorrow, he said. I just need to see him, even if it's from a distance. Ethan, please, be careful, I whispered. He's not the same man anymore. He hung up before I could say more. Lila was furious when she found out. Why are you letting him go? She demanded. What if it's dangerous? I didn't have an answer. Maybe because deep down, I wanted the truth too, even if it hurt. The next day felt endless. Every hour crawled by. By evening, Ethan hadn't called. I tried to keep busy, but my hands trembled too much to do anything. Finally, around midnight, the phone rang. Mom, Ethan said, voice shaking. I saw him. My breath caught. You did? Yes, he's alive. He lives in a small town called Ashbrook, near the Oregon border. He's older, has a grey beard, and a woman with him. They were holding hands. I sank into the chair, my knees weak. Did he see you? No, Ethan replied. But I'm going back tomorrow. I need to talk to him. I need to ask why. Ethan, don't, I whispered. Please don't go back. But I knew he wouldn't listen. The anger in his voice was too raw, too deep. That night, I couldn't sleep. I walked through the house, every room filled with memories that now felt like lies, every laughter, every promise, all of it stained by betrayal. I looked out the window at the moonlit street and thought, maybe some truths aren't meant to be found, because once they are, they ruin everything left behind. Ethan called again, the next evening. Mum, he said, his tone heavy. I talked to him. I froze. What did he say? Ethan exhaled shakily. He didn't even look surprised to see me. He just said, I knew this day would come. My stomach twisted. And then? He said he couldn't handle the pressure anymore. The debts, the expectations, the feeling that he'd failed as a husband and father. He wanted to disappear. He said meeting someone else gave him a reason to start over. I felt my heart shatter all over again. He left us to start over? I whispered. Ethan's voice cracked. He said he thought we'd be better off without him. That he set us free. Set us free. The words made me sick. What did you do? I asked. I walked away, Ethan said. I couldn't even look at him. But Mom, he looked guilty, like he'd been living with it all these years. When the call ended, I sat in silence, tears streaming down my face. For 11 years, I'd grieved a man who'd chosen to erase us. Now, all I felt was anger, deep, burning anger that stole my breath. Lila came in and hugged me tightly. Mum, we'll get through this, she whispered, but her voice trembled. For the first time, I realized that maybe closure doesn't come from answers. Sometimes it comes from deciding you don't need them anymore. Still, part of me wished I could see David once. Not to forgive him, but to tell him what his choice had done to us. A week later, another letter arrived. No return address, just my name written in that same familiar handwriting. My hands shook as I opened it. Carolyn, I never wanted you to find me. But now that you have, I need you to know. I wasn't running from love. I was running from myself. I couldn't bear to see what I'd become. A man who disappointed everyone he cared about. Please tell Ethan and Lila to stop searching. Let this be the end. I am sorry. For everything. David. I read it over and over until the words blurred. There was no peace in that letter, only cowardice dressed as regret. I burned it in the fireplace that night. The paper curled, blackened, and turned to ash, just like the life I once had. Ethan and Lila sat beside me, watching the flames. None of us spoke. There was nothing left to say. Finally, I whispered, maybe it's time we stop letting ghosts control us. Lila took my hand. He's gone, Mum. Let's leave him there. For the first time, I nodded, not in grief, but in acceptance. Some endings don't come with answers. They come with silence. And sometimes that silence is the only peace you'll ever get. It had been 2 months since the last letter, and though I told myself I was done, something inside me remained restless. Then one morning, A call came from a hospice in Spokane, Washington. The nurse said softly, "Ma'am, are you related to a Mr. David Mendez?" My heart nearly stopped. "Yes," I whispered. "He's been admitted here for advanced cancer. He asked us to contact you." For a long moment, I couldn't speak. After everything, the lies, the pain, the betrayal, he was dying, and he wanted me to come. I didn't know if I should feel relief, anger, or grief. But I knew one thing. I needed closure. I packed a small bag, left a note for Ethan and Lila, and drove north alone. The road stretched endlessly before me. Silent pine trees on both sides, mountains far in the distance. My mind replayed every memory, every promise David ever made. When I reached the hospice, a nurse led me to a quiet room. The air smelled faintly of antiseptic and rain. And there he was, thinner, pale, eyes sunken, but still recognizably him, the man I once loved. He looked up and smiled faintly. "You came," he said. His voice was weak, almost a whisper. I stood still, unsure of what to say. "You wanted me to," I replied. He nodded. "I didn't expect forgiveness. I wanted to see you one last time." I sat beside the bed, staring at him. "Why did you do it, David? Why did you leave us?" Tears filled his eyes. "I was drowning, Carolyn. Debt, failure, shame. I felt like I was ruining you and the kids. When that hiking accident happened, I saw a way out. I thought I was saving you." My voice shook. "Saving us. Accident happened. I saw a way out. I thought I was saving you." My voice shook. "Saving us? You destroyed us." He nodded slowly. "I know. Every day since, I've lived with that. I kept track of you. Birthdays, weddings. I never stopped caring. I just didn't have the courage to come back." For a long time, neither of us spoke. The only sound was the hum of the oxygen machine. Finally, I said softly, "I forgave you a long time ago. Not for you, but for me." A faint smile crossed his face. "You always had a stronger heart than mine." When I left that room hours later, I felt lighter, not because the pain was gone, but because I'd finally laid it down. The drive back to Boise was quiet. No music, no phone calls, just my thoughts and the sound of rain on the windshield. For years, I had imagined what I would say to him if I ever saw him again. Anger, accusations, rage. But when the moment came, none of that mattered. Only truth did. A week later, David passed away. The hospice called to inform me, and though I didn't cry, a deep calm spread through me. His chapter in my life had finally closed. I took one last look at his photo, the same one I'd kept hidden for years, then placed it in a box along with his old letters and wedding ring. I sealed the box and donated it to a local shelter for abandoned women. "Maybe this can start someone else's healing," I told the volunteer quietly. That evening, I sat on my porch watching the sunset, a cup of tea warming my hands. Ethan came over and sat beside me. "You okay, Mom?" he asked gently. "I think so," I said. "It's strange. I thought seeing him again would break me. But it didn't. It freed me." He nodded. "You deserved that, Mom." "You really did." I smiled faintly. So did he, in his own way. But some people spend their whole lives running, not from others, but from themselves. In the following weeks, I handled everything calmly, closed the missing person case, settled the legal paperwork, and informed the authorities. It was exhausting, but it felt right. Then, one night, as I stood by the fireplace, I whispered to the ashes of that last burned letter, "Goodbye, David." For real this time, and for the first time in over a decade, I slept peacefully. The weeks turned into months, and slowly, life began to bloom again. The house that once echoed with silence now filled with laughter. Ethan and Lila made a promise. Sunday dinners, no matter what. It became our small family tradition. At first it felt forced. The air around the table was heavy with what we'd lost. But over time, something shifted. We began to laugh again. We cooked together, shared stories, even teased one another about old memories. One evening, as we sat eating lasagna, Lila said softly, "You know, Mum, maybe Dad's biggest punishment was watching us move on without him." I looked at her, smiling sadly. Maybe. But that's not why we moved on. We did it because we had to. Ethan leaned back in his chair. "You taught us that, Mum. You taught us that love isn't about holding on. It's about knowing when to let go." His words touched something deep inside me. For years, I'd defined myself as David's widow, then as the woman he left behind. But now, I was just Carolyn, a woman who survived and found peace. In spring, I started volunteering at the library again, helping young readers. Every time I saw a child smile at a book, I felt hope growing quietly inside me. The pain never truly vanished. Grief doesn't work that way. But it stopped defining me, and in its place came something gentler, softer. Peace. If there's one thing I've learned from all of this, it's that pain has a strange way of shaping who we become. For years, I thought strength meant holding everything together, never crying, never breaking. But real strength isn't about pretending you're okay. It's about facing what hurts and still choosing to live anyway. David ran because he was afraid. Afraid of failure, afraid of responsibility, afraid of being seen as imperfect. But life isn't about perfection. It's about persistence, about showing up even when everything inside you wants to disappear. There was a time I blamed myself, wondered if I wasn't enough, if I could have saved him. But healing taught me something powerful. You can't fix someone who doesn't want to be found. Sometimes love means letting go, even when every part of you wants to hold on. Forgiveness doesn't erase pain, and it doesn't excuse betrayal, but it releases you from it. It gives you back your future. When people ask me now, "How did you move on after something like that?" I tell them this: you don't move on, you move through. You carry the scars, but you learn to see beauty in the strength they left behind. So if anyone out there is living with a broken heart, I hope you remember, you are not what someone else did to you. You are what you choose to do next. If you've listened this far, thank you for sharing my story. I never thought I'd have the courage to speak about what happened, but if my words reach even one person who's struggling to let go of the past, then it was worth it. Life doesn't always give us the endings we want. Sometimes it gives us endings we need. My husband's betrayal shattered me, but it also forced me to find the woman I lost somewhere along the way. The woman who could stand on her own, breathe deeply, and still believe in kindness. To anyone watching who's been hurt, abandoned, or betrayed, don't let the darkness convince you that love is a lie. There are still people who will stand beside you, people who will help you rebuild, piece by piece. And sometimes, that person will be you. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, and subscribe. Your support helps bring more real-life emotional stories to those who need them most. And remember, you can't always choose who breaks your heart, but you can choose not to let the breaking define you. Broken heart,